Thank you. And it's an amazing opportunity to be with you guys. I've been teaching your youth, every couple of years at the Life Conference for the last, 10, 12 years or so. Loved it. And now I've get the honor of speaking to you. I don't know if it's a demotion, if it's a, it's just, but when I heard about the leadership here, I love speaking to pastors. I love speaking to leaders because I feel like I've felt so many things that maybe you're currently feeling or have felt, and especially right now. I just feel this new urgency that we need to be strong. We need to be united. There's so many crazy things going in the world, and we need the leaders to just be immovable, to be stable. And we live in a time where I see so many leaders just fearful. We're afraid. We're scared of making mistakes, and there's just so much pressure on us. So I've looked forward to this time, and I have been praying for you. I've been praying for your strength and for your courage. And I just want to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you saw that category, strength and courage, what would you rate yourself right now? I'm just going, no, I'm strong, I'm secure in the Lord, I know who I am right now, and I'm actually really courageous. Like I'm ready to try something, I'm ready to step out in faith. I mean, where are you on that scale? I mean, I'm 47, and I just think about life, and I go, gosh, I don't know that life here in this country, and when when talking about Christianity, I don't know that it's ever been so bleak. And yet I can honestly say I don't know that I've ever been this confident in my faith. I look at where we're headed, and I'm going, gosh, this doesn't look good. And yet I go, I don't fear anything. I'm so confident about the future and the future of the church. I hope that's the way you feel too. I mean, I just sense this strengthening in the church and kind of a blowing away of the chaff and going, okay, what's going to be left here? And we're going to get serious about this. So I'm very excited about the future of the church. And I'm excited that we serve a risen Savior and that He's returning to judge the world, and that we will be waiting for Him, anticipating Him, worshiping Him until He returns. And I know that many of you are going to be those who are faithful and standing with Him. And so I look forward to it. There's a passage that's been on my heart the last couple of months. It's 2 Timothy 3, in talking about this world that we live in right now. But it's an interesting passage because he starts off, Paul tells Timothy, understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. That phrase, times of difficulty, literally means terrible times. Terrible times are coming in the last days. And then he says this in verse 2, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people. For among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women, burdened with sins and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. So Paul explains to Timothy, he goes, in the last days, it's going to get really bad. It's going to get terrible. And he goes through this list and he explains why it's going to be so bad. But the thing you need to know about this list is he's not talking about the world. He's not talking about atheists here. He's talking about the church. He says why it's going to be so horrible is in the church. You're going to have these people who have the appearance of godliness, but they deny its power. You have these people that they keep learning, but they never come to a knowledge of the truth. And he says, I want you to avoid such people. I mean, Paul makes it clear to the Corinthians, he goes, I'm not talking about the people in the world. He goes, if you're going to disassociate with them, you just have to leave the world. He goes, I'm talking about the ones who call themselves brothers and sisters. And here he's warning, he goes, be careful in the church. There's going to come a time where he says, he starts off by saying, people will be lovers of self. The crazy thing about this list is many of these things we read, and nowadays we just kind of shrug our shoulders at it. They don't seem like terrible sins, even in the church. Like we read, like disobedient to parents. Big deal. I mean, isn't it more that we are shocked when a child actually obeys his parents? And that's crept into the church. There's an expectation. If you don't believe me, work in the child care. It's there. And we just kind of go, man, what can we do? It's just where we live. There's this idea of lovers of self. I was reading one commentary that said, that phrase, lovers of self, is first because that's kind of the sewage pipe through which all the other garbage flows through. He says, you're a lover of self. You love yourself. That's why he says, lovers of self, lovers of money. Why do you love money? Because you love yourself. You want money. Proud. Why are you proud? Because you love yourself. Why are you arrogant? Because you love yourself. Why are you abusive? Because you don't think about what you do to other people. You're thinking about yourself, this idea of self-love, which is so normal in the world today. I remember being in junior high or high school, and remember that Whitney Houston song came out, the greatest love of all is learning to love yourself. It's the greatest love of all. That's love, when you can learn to love yourself. And yet Paul says, be careful. In the end times, it's going to get crazy because people are going to love themselves. And even in the church, you hear this creeping in, where people go, well, Jesus says love your neighbor as yourself, and so let's focus on loving ourselves more so we can love our neighbors. Because I don't love myself enough. And the truth is you're going, man, no, you're crazy about yourself. Every time we get together, you want to talk about yourself. Let's talk about me and how I can love me and how you can love me. It's just this idea, because you guys understand and it's become so normal to us. I mean, I was reading this thing about the sociologists are saying that our culture, this generation, is by far, by a long shot, the most narcissistic culture to ever exist. I mean, we think it's normal and acceptable for every single person in our country to create a page talking about themselves. Wanting everyone to look at themselves. Everyone thinking, I have the opinion that's going to change. We think that's normal. You understand, back then, they'd be like, you got to be kidding me. Everyone is going to think that their voice should be heard, and everyone is going to build this shrine to themselves so that everyone else can see and make themselves look as good as possible. It's normal. And Paul says this is going to get terrible because this is going to be in the church. People are going to be lovers of self, not lovers of God. They're going to love themselves, be arrogant, proud, they'll love money, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, which is the mark of a spirit-filled person, as he just thanks God for everything in Christ Jesus. But they're going to become ungrateful, unholy. They're not going to care about holiness. Let me just say something about that. Okay, when I grew up, we talked a lot about purity and holiness. And lately, there's been a new thing happening, which there's part of it that I love. And I feel like I'm part of the one that instigated some of this, where I would look at the church and go, man, there's starving people out in the world. There's people with no clean drinking water. There's girls that are in, little children and little boys who are being sold into slavery as sex slaves. We got to get to them. We got to get water to them. We got to get food to them. We got to rescue them from all these places. And I was just trying to awaken a church, and I saw this younger generation that had this faith and said, I'll jump on a plane right now. I'll jump on a plane right now. I'll risk my life to rescue these kids. I'll risk my life. I'll give everything I have. And I love it. I go, man, that's a great, great passion. I see this fire and I see this faith. But that same generation, I also see that they've walked away from holiness. And we're willing to go and take steps of faith. But are we willing to keep our bodies pure? And our minds pure? Are we still concerned about being morally pure in the eyes of God? You can be heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Again, how many times are we seeing it now, even in the church, where we're trying to draw people into the church through pleasure? Come on, if you follow God, He'll make you rich. He'll get everyone healthy. You'll have your family back. Don't you want God? And it's all about you, and it's all about pleasure. And they're like, okay, let me try that. If that's going to restore my marriage, if that's going to make my kids love me, if that's going to take away my sickness, if that's going to help me get a job, if that's going to make me rich. And you've got this gospel being preached out there saying, if you follow Jesus, you will get this. Rather than, no, if you follow Jesus, you'll get Jesus. And that's enough. That's enough. He'll be your shepherd, and you won't even want. It'll be like your cup is overflowing. But he says, no, in the end times, they're going to be lovers of pleasure, not lovers of self. And so I've been praying, going, God, I don't want to be like, the end is near kind of guy, but I look at the world, and I look at where we're at, and I look at the church, and I go, gosh, now is the time for us to be strong and go, okay, that's fine. That's going to happen, but not me. That's why I love when Paul would tell Timothy things and say, the world's going to get this way. But as for you, man of God, not you. Okay, this is what's going to happen in the future, but you, here's what I want from you. And that's what I was praying for in this room. I'm going, God, I just want them to be strong. I want them to be strong. The world's getting crazy. Who knows what's going to happen next? You just see it happening. The writing's on the wall. Every month seems like just something new that goes against this book. And it's like, I don't know if this can be stopped. And so I'm praying for you while I was flying here today. I'm on the airplane, and I'm on, not on my knees. That would have been a little weird. It's just too tight with the aisles. And I'm just, on my face like this, kind of praying, God, come on, help me. And I take a break and I would look, and, you got the TV screens going on, and I'm praying. And every time I peek up, that show, The Deadliest Catch was on. That's about people who go to the Bering Sea and try to catch a crab and die. And so I'm praying and I'm looking, at the TV every once in a while, praying some more, looking up, watching, okay, how many did they catch? But there was this picture, I'm not trying to exegete Deadliest Catch, but there was just this thought of, man, our job, sometimes we as believers will look at the world and all the stuff that's going on, and we try to change that. And I just don't know if that's what I see in here. It seems like there are some things that are inevitable of where our world is going to go. And our job is not to calm the sea, but to make sure our boat is intact. and make sure it keeps heading in the right direction, and make sure that crew is strong and courageous, and we just keep going and keep steadying the course, because we're not going to be able to affect the whole world in that sense, but we're responsible for the church. We're responsible for our boat. And I just kept looking at these boats being turned and tossed by the ocean. It's like, man, it wasn't their job to try to calm the seas. They can't do that. But the boat, they had control over that. The crew, they had control over that. And it was just this picture in my mind as I was reading 2 Timothy, going, man, that's what he's saying here. Is, okay, this is going to happen, but you, the church, what are you going to do amidst that? Are you going to stay the course? Are you going to keep these people encouraged and focused and go, no, we're heading somewhere. I know right now it feels like we're going backwards. The storm's coming right at us and we're turning left, right, everything else. People are getting thrown overboard. But let's just keep this thing going, because it's going to happen. We got to keep going in this direction. See, this is about the church. I think a lot of times we need to pay less attention to the world and more attention to the church. That's what Paul was saying, right? In 1 Corinthians 5. It's like, I'm not asking you to judge the outsiders, but I am asking you to judge the church, to judge those who are inside. That's what we're called to do. And the first place we have to look at is us, right? We got to start with ourselves. Are you personally deeply in love with Jesus right now? Are you secure, strong, courageous? Going, God, I love you. I see where this world is going. I'm not going with it. I'll go against the flow because I love you. Are you still in love with your people? During this council, we're talking about being this family. But I've made many mistakes in ministry by assuming that couple's doing fine. I mean, haven't there been so many times where you have dinner with a couple and you have a good time, whatever, and then you find out like a week later, 2 weeks later, that they're ready to leave each other, and you're like, what? I just assumed everything was fine. They seem fine, and you just want to kick yourself like, oh, I should have seen this, I should have seen this, I should have seen this. I just assumed they were fine because they're on staff. I assumed they were fine. He's an elder. I assumed he was fine. He went to Bible college. I assumed this, I assumed that. And so it's very easy for me to walk in this room and go, man, I'm just going to assume they all love their people. And they love being shepherds. They love the people they lead. And that would be such a foolish assumption. Man, having spent most of my life in ministry, there were many seasons where I can't say that I loved the people I ministered to. That's why John was asking me, he goes, how do you prepare before you speak? And I said, I've got a series of 7 questions that I ask myself. But the second question I ask is, do I really love these people? Because there are many times when I walked on a stage and I didn't love the people. I was just getting the message across. But I didn't look in their eyes and think, okay, if I really loved her, if I really loved him, what would I say? What would I really say that's going to matter 100 years from now? That's going to matter when he stands before God. Man, what can I say? God, I care about him. I care about these people. I don't want them to just keep doing this and going through the routine and then standing before you. If their hearts were gone and they were just speaking with their lips and just, working a job and taking a salary and just, going on with tradition, rather than, man, igniting their hearts again and not forsaking their first love. It's like, okay, God, help me to love them. And even right now, as I'm looking at you, I'm going, God, help me to really care, to really believe I'm doing something up here and trying to use whatever spiritual gift I have to bless you. So that maybe 100 years from now, when you look me in the eyes, you can say, man, I remember what you said that day. It had an impact on me. It got me thinking, do I still believe that God that I first believed in when I was young? Because I remember being young. I remember walking out of Sunday school and believing in the story of David and Goliath and walking around going, no, I can do anything. I can do anything. I remember as a young minister just, walking around, maybe knocking on doors, just believing that God was going to do something and then slowly board meetings happened. And budgets happened and everything else. And it's like, Lord, is there anything I can do to get them back to you, alone with you, where no one else is around? It's just you and this book. And you're going, okay, God, that's what it says in the last days. Okay, even if it's you and me, even if none go with me, I'm going to follow you because I love you, Jesus. Like, when's the last time you had a moment like that? Where's just you adoring God? And saying, Lord, I'm going to obey this, and then to stand in front of your people, having met with him, and then coming to the presence of it, because you're a lover of God, not a lover of pleasure, not just a lover of ministry, not a lover of success, not a lover of when the room is full of people, not a lover of when the budget is met and exceeds, and not a lover of a good offering that week, but just a lover of God, where it's like, I adore him and I'll say whatever I need to say, because he tells Timothy, look, in the last days, a time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they'll accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths. As for you, always be sober-minded, endure suffering, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. Where he goes, Timothy, there's going to be a time when no one puts up with this but you. As for you, let them go. They're going to go and they're going to just find a teacher to tell them what they want to hear. Why? Because they're a lover of pleasure. If they want to get divorced, they'll find someone with a PhD to tell them it's okay to divorce. If they want to have sex outside of marriage, they'll find someone with a PhD to explain to them, oh, no, this is okay. If they want to be greedy and spend all the money on themselves and neglect this mission to reach the unreached around the world, they'll find someone with a PhD to explain to them why it's okay for us to just sit and bask in all of his blessings. We'll just find someone to tell us whatever we want to hear. You want to abort your child? You want to marry someone of the same sex? I'll find you a teacher, Christian, PhD. They'll tell you it's fine. You want to stop believing in hell? I'll find you someone with a PhD to tell you that. You want to just believe that there's no punishment, that God's a God of love and only love, and there's no wrath, there's no judgment to come? There's plenty of books about that. What do you want to believe? What's your pleasure? What would you like? I'll find you a teacher to give you that. But Paul tells Timothy, don't you be one of those guys. You know what this book says. You preach it. You lay it out there. Now's the time to stay the course. Now this time is to stay strong, because the time's coming. People are going to be lovers of themselves, lovers of pleasure, not lovers of God. Do you love your staff right now? I had times when I really loved my staff. I mean, really, like every one of them, where I thought I would take a bullet for everyone on staff right now. And there have been other times where I'd like to put a bullet. No, I'm kidding. But, there are those times. But again, first of all, we got to go, okay, because sometimes we go, oh, my church is this way, the world is this way. But first, we got to look at ourselves. We got to look at the leadership and go, okay, what are we modeling here? Am I a man or woman who just gets on his or her face and adores God, gets alone with this word, gets convicted and says, no, I will preach this, I will lay it out? Because again, we're living in a time where I'm seeing some of these younger believers. They're excited, they're doing crazy things, they're living by faith. I love that. But what they're unwilling to do is preach truth.